What's poppin', y'all? Kendrick Lamar may have made the first mistake that we've seen out of him the entire year. We're going to dive into his most recent release, Watch the Party Die, which was a song he dropped on Instagram Reels. It's not officially released on streaming platforms as of yet, and we don't know if it will ever be. I'm not sure if it's a sample issue. I'm not sure if it needs to get clearance. I'm not sure if it will be released in a little bit because the record label is just trying to catch up. Kendrick Lamar is independent now, quote unquote, but he's got a partnership most likely with another record label in the same way that TDE had a partnership with Interscope. But I do want to give both praise and criticism where it's due for this track and the decision to drop this track. And then we're going to reflect on whether it was the right move or a misstep for Kendrick. So we'll start off with the praise, and I enjoyed the song. So my personal appreciation for this song, I liked it. I liked the message behind it. It's not a new message, of course. It's something that Kendrick Lamar has been consistent about throughout his entire career. I just think now we're seeing him up the ante. For example, these are the same messages that he's talked about since, hell, even To Pimp a Butterfly, even before that. They've been common throughout his career. But now we're starting to see more anger come out of Kendrick Lamar. The frustration is bubbling. Like, for instance, in verse 3, when he talks about Lecrae and D1, which are two Christian rappers, and then he says, I want to be empathetic, my heart like D1, but I will, and then he just drops this moment of silence. And it's almost as if he's so overwhelmed that he doesn't want to say like what unspeakable things he could commit to get to the end goal that he wants, which is, things to be obviously not as degenerate and destruction, which he also paints Drake as being one of the elements of that. Although there are many. There are a couple of interpretations floating around. I'm really not the guy that enjoys, on stream at least, or on video. I don't even stream. What am I talking about? On video, dissecting lyrics. It's just not me. I like to do it in my own personal time. But I am drawn to how Kendrick reflects on his own legacy and the state of the music industry. One of the new themes that we see appear here is more of the Christianity. Because if we look at Kendrick Lamar's bars in Damn, the Damn album, and I don't know too much about To Pimp a Butterfly. I can't recall that off of the top of my head because I just didn't listen to that album as much as I did Damn or any of the other albums. But Kendrick Lamar historically has had a lot of reference to the 5%ers, which are an offshoot, Nation of Gods and Earths. And he would drop a lot of bars there, Hebrew Israelite bars too. Some people wouldn't be able to catch them. Yeah, you really, really needed to be aware of what these groups even operate under to catch some of these bars. However, now it's a lot more Christianity on this track, especially like, references to Jezebel. And he did for sure grow up Christian and going to church, but even mentioning these Christian rappers, the chorus, which is like Dear God. So I like this theme overall. Now there is some criticism that people have made. Some people are saying, I don't think this is a Drake diss, number one. There are probably themes here that relate to how Kendrick Lamar feels about Drake, and that's one thing. I don't think this is an academics diss either, which is what people are trying to paint it as, but I do think it's addressing a criticism that academics has made of not just Kendrick Lamar, but also Drake, but mainly Kendrick Lamar, where he always says, these guys gotta speak. They need to talk to somebody. And I think that's where he calls out these radio personalities. So the criticism of Kendrick Lamar is that he barely speaks. We never hear from him. So I don't think he's dissing radio personalities. Well, he is, to a degree. But he says, the radio personality pushing propaganda for salary. Let me know when they turn up as a casualty. I want agony. I think he's sending another, this is my own interpretation, which is a little bit different. I think he doesn't want to sit down with these people. So their whole thing is, Kendrick Lamar needs to speak. But if he's going to speak, he's going to have to speak to a radio personality or somebody really big. He's not going to speak to academics. I think he doesn't like him. But then you've got the other big figures, which are radio personalities. And that would likely do the most numbers, get the most reach, get the most coverage. So I think Kendrick Lamar here is pointing them out and saying, or alluding to the fact that he won't speak to them. And I like this because we're trying to not we, because I'm not doing this, but people are trying to pigeonhole Kendrick Lamar or force him into this box, kind of like a cube into a sphere, cube into a circle, and making him speak when Kendrick Lamar has never been the guy that speaks a lot. And I love the fact where he's somewhat saying, hey, look, it's my art that speaks for me. He's always been someone that lets his music do the talking, and I don't see that ever changing. And I think he's letting people know, hey, even this beef is not going to change that fact. Like my visuals, my music, first and foremost, is going to be how I send this message. For instance, To Pimp a Butterfly, right? That was all music. And then if there was any time that he was really going to speak, it was during the George Floyd incidents of 2020. And he didn't say anything there either. He did show up to, I believe, one of the protests that was going on in LA, but he didn't say anything. He didn't drop a statement. He didn't hop on an interview and talk about it. And he's talked about some of these things early on in his career, but now he doesn't have to do that. So why would he have to do that now when he didn't even do that for a cause that is deeper than rap, really, more like a social issue? So this is something that I really like about Kendrick Lamar, is he's not letting people force him into addressing them, justifying something to them, or explaining anything to them. And I like that this is somewhat moving past the Drake beef. Sure, like we said, there might be subliminals that could be directed at Drake, but overall, this wasn't about that beef. Kendrick's moving forward, and that's something I can respect. Now, when it comes to this misstep, I will admit that I have criticism of this release. I don't think it hit the mark, not the song quality. I said this already, but I put out a tweet on Twitter, of course, X, saying Kendrick dropped something that came and went. Nobody is still discussing that, and that I'm referring to Watch the Party Die, other than Kendrick Lamar fanatics. It was solid, and in the context of an ongoing beef, a song like that would likely live longer. But since the beef is over, the flame for a track like that went out real quick. This was in response to a fan saying Kendrick currently has the music industry in the palm of his hand. Instead of chasing a hit record, he gave us something meaningful instead. He's rewriting the rules. You can't rewrite the rules. The consumer is the person that dictates what's going to happen or what they respond to. And in this case, they didn't respond to it I wouldn't say that well, but they moved past it. And I do believe this could be one of several reasons. Number one, the timing and context of this, it just didn't make sense, because the perfect runway that I'm talking about is, number one, this Kendrick Lamar Not Like Us song is still in the top 10. It's still being played everywhere. It's going to continue to be played everywhere until most likely next year, throughout the end of this year. However, there are going to be moments in this time frame where, metaphorically, Kendrick will be stomping out Drake without even having to do anything, because in November, the Grammy Awards are going to be nominated, or the nominations are going to come out for the Grammy Awards in the first weekend of February, I think, or early February. Kendrick Lamar is likely going to be nominated. He's always been a critic favorite. So if Not Like Us, Euphoria, whichever, gets nominated for a Grammy, that's going to be huge conversation. Everybody's going to be talking about it. And they're going to wonder, hey, did Drake get nominated for any of these songs? Oh, wait, Drake's not nominated for any of the diss songs? Now imagine if Drake is nominated for one of the diss songs and Kendrick is nominated for one of the diss songs for, let's say, Rap Song of the Year. Who knows? I do think if they don't put Drake up, that's crazy. But I think you have to submit your track. So if Drake doesn't submit, that's another thing. So that'll cause a lot of conversation around this track, probably an uptick of streams. That's in November. Then we get to late January, early February, which is going to be the Grammy Awards. So then this is when we get to see whether or not Kendrick Lamar wins the Grammy or not. For this case, we assume that he got nominated. If he loses, that's going to be a big conversation. If he wins, that's going to be a big conversation. There's also a likelihood that he performs at the Grammy Awards. We don't know for sure, though, because he's going to perform the next week for the Super Bowl. Regardless, that's going to be a big moment for Kendrick Lamar and Drake in this beef, no matter what. So it's reigniting the flame of this beef and conversation that people are going to have about it. Then we skip to the next week, which is going to be the Super Bowl. So that's another, he's obviously going to perform some of these diss tracks. Euphoria, at least Not Like Us, is being performed 100% at the Super Bowl. That's going to up the stream. So the song is back up again, and Kendrick Lamar is still hot. Everybody's still paying attention to him. Sure, there will be the haters that say, oh man, he's still milking this thing, even though he's not really milking it. And then an album, most likely, or right before. So this is perfect runway with all of these external events that Kendrick Lamar doesn't have to do anything. So it's not even like he's trying to extend the beef. He's trying to reignite the flame of these tracks. It's just being done for him, the way the calendar works and the way these events work, and him getting put up for the NFL. But I think that Kendrick Lamar, one of two things. He may be nervous because this is the first time since the beginning of this beef, when Kendrick Lamar didn't even drop, where Kendrick Lamar hasn't been completely showered with praise. And this is because of the NFL situation. Historically, Kendrick Lamar has been praised by critics, by the majority of hip hop throughout his career. Yet, with this decision, I wouldn't say he was getting hate, but a lot of people were saying, hey, this is the wrong choice for the Super Bowl. The majority of people were saying, yo, Lil Wayne is the one that needs to speak out. Even Kendrick Lamar's peers are saying that. And Kendrick Lamar is somebody that looks up to Lil Wayne. And then Lil Wayne comes out with the video saying that he was really hurt about this situation. So I think Kendrick Lamar is feeling like, damn, This is the first thing that's happened to me where people aren't showing overwhelming support. And I think that's what he expected, especially the way that he dropped that launch video or that promotional video. He probably thought people are going to love this one. And they did, until they realized, wait, Lil Wayne's not performing, and things kind of switched up. So that could be an element, is the nervousness. Then there's also maybe he's got a bigger ego after this beef and thinks people are going to pay attention to what he has to say as much as they did when it was in context of the beef. And this is where the Drake stands that talk about, oh, Kendrick Lamar needs to talk about Drake to be relevant. I don't think that's true, but I think an element of that is Kendrick Lamar has very dense tracks some of the time. When he chooses to make a hit, it's not as dense, but this track is one of the dense ones. And it's the majority of his catalog is like this. That takes a significant amount of time investment and appreciation to comb through, figure out what he's saying. Now, if there's a context of a beef, which is conflict, that the average person loves conflict, they're going to want to look into it a little bit more. Oh, what did I miss? What's the quote unquote tea? What's the beef? Are there subliminals being thrown here? That's number one. And if it's a beef with Drake, who's the biggest rapper, and then there's also the anticipation of a response from the other individual. Without that going on, which Drake already said, hey, this beef's done. Kendrick Lamar said no round twos. There's a lot less of an incentive for the average rap fan that was closely following that beef to comb through and keep discussing a Kendrick Lamar record when it's past the conflict. They don't really care. It's only going to be Kendrick Lamar fans that care about something like this, or like strong rap supporters, followers, or people like me that are really going to pay attention to these types of things. And maybe Kendrick Lamar, his ego now is thinking, oh, I'm that guy. I just took this guy's head off. Now everybody's going to pay attention to what I got to say. And I don't think that's going to be the case. They're going to pay attention to what you got to say in relation to Drake, but just independent of that, I don't think that much more people are going to be paying attention to that compared to before. Maybe, I can't call it in a number, but let's say 10%, 20%, but not 100% more or double than before. Because just look at, for instance, 616, that's a similar track, was released on IG Reels, versus Watch the Party Die. 616, when you compare that, it didn't get the same deep analysis. Watch the Party Die didn't get the same deep analysis or attention from fans for the same duration as 616. So that's a sign that this track wasn't as impactful as it could have been in relation to 616. But I described why I believe that to be the case a couple of minutes ago when I said the context in which these tracks were dropped and when they were dropped and who they involved or mentioned. So overall, if we're talking about hitting home runs, Kendrick Lamar has been hitting home runs, and this is the first time where I would say if his goal was to keep elevating, this was not the move to do so. I wouldn't say this fell flat, but this is something that will not be remembered very long after, unless there's something else coming, which who knows? Maybe he's dropping this and then going to drop something after, but I'm more inclined to think that this was a panic move after the feedback that he got from the fans, and he's paying attention to everything, than it was something that he was going to do anyway. But let me know what you guys think. Did Kendrick misstep with this release, or do you think Watch the Party Die was another hit? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Peace.